Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you are ready for another episode of Theology Throwdown. We are so excited to get into this today. Two brothers from different mothers having differing theological backgrounds, but loving God, loving one another, seeing if they can KO each other's doctrine. I'm Pastor J. Anthony Giver alongside my good friend, Pastor Ray Heupel. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you again, Jay. I'm ready for another round.
Ready for another round. Let's get right into it.
Let's do it.
Human responsibility versus God's sovereignty. Is God controlling every detail, or does human choice carry real weight?
Jay, the questions are always phrased in a way that I have to just correct them. Of course, human choice carries real weight, but that has nothing to do with whether or not God is sovereign. God can be sovereign over human choice, and in fact, that's what the answer is. Jesus said, "Are not two sparrows sold for a copper coin, and yet not one of them falls to the ground apart from your Father's will?" Now, you can think of all the different ways in which a sparrow can fall to the ground. But Jesus is saying there that unless it's God's will, that sparrow will not fall. Some sparrow in the middle of the outer mountains of Mongolia that nobody even sees, right? If all of the forces of man, if all of the demons in this whole world, in the whole universe, would try to take out that sparrow with all of their choices, unless God willed it, they wouldn't be able to do it. And God is fully aware of everything that they're doing. And there are many, many scriptures that talk about this. And so this is really bigger than just election like we talk about, though this would include that the choice to receive Christ is not outside of God's sovereignty either. But I go to scriptures like this. Proverbs 16:33, the lot, the dice, right, is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Something that we would say is pure random, right? God determines randomness, It's by his will. That dice wouldn't be able to exist. The molecules that hold it together would blink out of existence if God, by his will, did not continue to will creation. That's why Jesus says, in him all things hold together. They continue to hold together. That Jesus is not just the creator, God, Father, Son, and Spirit, all three persons playing a role in creation, but the sustainer of all things. That there wouldn't be a tomorrow for God to foreknow unless he first willed that everything continue, that the electromagnetic spectrum continue, that atoms and neutrons and electrons that we're all made up of continue. God stopped willing them, they blink out of existence. And so the idea that human freedom or human responsibility is outside of God's sovereignty is a contradiction.
Yeah, and I agree with you in a lot of ways. I think I'm going to go a little deeper here and kind of an explanation with it. I'm going to start my clock here in just a second here. But I think that there's also another phrase, another part to this. Is God controlling every detail, or does human choice carry real weight? So my question, or my interpretation of this question is that, does God control or do humans have a choice? I think that's really what I'm kind of taking from that. And I believe that God, the way the question is phrased, is God controlling every detail? Like, is he controlling your will? Is he controlling what you do? Is he controlling this? Is he controlling that? I believe he allowed man. He's so sovereign, Pastor Ray, that God in eternity created time for man, had the ability to see how everything played out, not affect free will, but still work everything out that it fits the puzzle that he wanted it all to come together. So he watched how things played out, saw people make decisions, said, but I'm still going to have this happen, and had the ability to take all those pieces, put it together, still allow his will to be fulfilled in the earth, even though not touching or affecting free will at all. And so I believe that God is not controlling every detail, but he's in control of the details. You follow where I'm going with that?
I think I do. I think I do. I'm not sure where to take it on. Let me bring you a passage in Acts 4. So, my understanding of God's sovereignty and his control, that God's sovereignty does include our will, that if God did not continue to will it, I wouldn't have a will. I could lose my mind. I visit people all the time who have dementia. They no longer have a will in any meaningful sense. They don't know who they are. They don't know how to eat. And it's by God's sovereignty that they are in that position. God could heal them. I wish that he would heal everybody. He doesn't heal everybody. And so the will that we have is a creature of God, that God enables to act, and our level of intelligence influences that. And that too is ultimately determined by God. I do agree that we make meaningful choices according to what we want, and we'll be held accountable for that. Without that idea of human freedom, there is no responsibility, right? I have to be responsible for the evils I do. But even that, and here's, I think, is the strongest argument that I can make, that if God is somehow sovereign over evil, then clearly it's easy for him to be sovereign over good, right? If people that are choosing for God, God is sovereign over them, well, sure, they're on his side. If people who are choosing against God, and yet we can see that God determined, in an ultimate sense, what they were going to do, even though they still did what they wanted. And I would give you a passage here from Acts 4. For truly in this city there were gathered together against your holy servant Jesus, whom you anointed, both Herod, Pontius Pilate, with the Gentiles and the peoples of Israel, and here it is, to do whatever your hand and your purpose predestined to occur. So they did, they made their choices, but they were predestined to make those choices.
Right.
Crucifying him, striking him, plucking out his beard, all the horrible things that God, in one sense, hates. Yet God, in a bigger sense, determined and even predestined those things, not because he liked them, but because that's what was necessary to save us. So he predestined the free choices of those who hated his son and chose to do evil, but they were part of his plan. And his plan comes first.
And I agree with you. And I think this may be one of the rounds that we might have the same view. That's not going to happen very often.
Don't make me spit out my coffee now.
I know.
I want to do it for effect, but then that's going to mess everything up.
Because I totally see that. I see that. Obviously, God is in charge of all the details and all of that, but he isn't. I think the big thing that where the struggle always lies is how does God be sovereign but still give us free will? And I think that's the thing, or like, how does he not control everybody, still say they have free will, but everything works to the counsel of his will? And I think that's where the reality comes that he's God. And I think there's some things, Ray, that we just can't figure out. Like, my thought is this. I always tell people this, whenever there's something that they can't understand, I said, how is it that when you're in a church service or you're praying and seeking God, you're alone with him, and you know how it is, you feel like you're the only person on the planet, and he makes you feel like
sermon is right to you.
Right to you, and like no one else is in the room.
Yeah.
But he's doing that to billions of people and knows everything they have to do, and it makes everybody feel like, if you can answer how he can do that, then you can answer how he can be sovereign in eternity past, creative thing, have free will, everything still work out to his will. There's some things that are just too vast for us to understand, and it's okay, but to be able to say, you know what, he is in control, even though, and he's ruling and reigning, and he sovereignly put things in place, but it still worked together with his will, while all the meanwhile not touching man's free will.
And I do agree that man has free will, but I want to just jump into that just a minute. What do we mean by free will? If there's only certain ways we can be free. We can talk about a freedom from coercion, right? If someone's forcing me to make a choice, I'm not free, right?
Right.
But then there's also like the freedom of intelligence, like we talked about earlier. Somebody who has dementia is not free to make certain choices that we're able to make. Or, animals are not free to do the things that we want to do. Every swallow has to build its nest the same way. It's built into it. But man is a creature of reason. He's free at that level. So we have freedom of reason, we have freedom from coercion, and we have that. But what we can't have for will to be meaningful is freedom from ourselves. My will is from me. I want to do things, right? I'm always going to choose vanilla ice cream over chocolate ice cream because everybody knows that vanilla ice cream's better. And so I'm always going to make that choice if I have the freedom to do it, right? Unless I want to be stupid or just surprise somebody or do something that I don't like. But I'm going to choose what I want. But see, this is the thing. What man wants, fallen man wants, is to be his own God, is to reject Christ. And that's why I say God has to give him a new heart, or he'll never. It's not a matter of he's not free to choose Christ. In a certain sense, theoretically, he is. There's a bell. I better
wrap it up. 30 seconds.
Theoretically, sure, but he'll never do that. Like, I'll never choose that chocolate ice cream. I don't want it. I want the vanilla if I have the choice. And if fallen man has the choice, he's always going to choose self-made God. So God's got to do something first. So that freedom that I'm talking about is a freedom to do what we want, and that actually is what damns us. We're free to do what we want, and unless God takes that away by giving us the freedom to do what he wants, we'll never choose him.
Without a doubt. And then that's why we have the decision. All of us have to make a choice of choose you this day whom it is that you're going to serve. But whether we choose God or not, God still is sovereign, and he's still going to carry out his plan. And whether you serve him or not, he's still going to fulfill what it is that he's called to fulfill.
Amen. I can agree with that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you've enjoyed this latest and greatest time of Theology Throwdown. We have such a blast battling together. But at the end of it all, we touch gloves. It's all love, and we move forward in Jesus' name. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.